Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Daniel. We are now in chapter 7. We left off in verse 19 yesterday. I just want to recap because verse 19 is important for us to understand why Daniel took a break when he looked at his dream of the monsters. He was quite taken aback by the fourth of the monsters. Now, I use the word monsters, although the Aramaic text here use wild beasts or unknown animals. They are very much a monster in our own modern day terminology, where it is not something that you see naturally, but it is in the dream. And hence, we could actually call this a nightmare because it is a very scary dream. In verse 19, he says, and then, meaning after everything that was above, he's personally interested. Now, understand that this situation is that we have Daniel fast asleep, and then he dreams, and he is in the dream. So, Daniel is asleep as well as in the dream. So, whenever we read in this text, when he says, I desire, it is not the I in the asleep. It is I in the dream. So I is in the dream, desiring to know the exact meaning of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron, its claws of bronze or copper, which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet. Now, I draw your attention that this is a repeat of what was above when it was talking about the fourth beast. The fourth beast, or the fourth monster, if you like, uh, is really in verse 7. So you can take a look at verse 7. And 12 verses down, we review it again. Now, I think it is important for us to feel for Daniel. He is in a dream. He is now recalling his dream. He is talking about himself in the dream that I desired. I really wanted. I'm so inclined. Inclined. And this is the terminology we need to be clear. Know the exact meaning. To know the exact meaning is one word. It's quite interesting. This idea here, he desired or determined to stand. Now, this expression to stand literally is to gain certainty. Gain certainty, uh, to know the truth, right? Know truth. Now, we are not talking about the Hebrew expression. This is a Semitic expression. To know the exact meaning is an expression, but it comes from a single Hebrew word, which is to stand. I am inclined, I am determined to gain certainty, to know the truth, to stand on something that is sure. Now, he is bothered by the fourth beast. Remember, the fourth beast is the most ferocious. We now talk about the fourth beast being so ferocious and so different from all the others. Now, the idea of all the others is really the expression all of them. all of them being the first three monsters. They are all monsters. Although the first three did resemble some form of an animal that Daniel could describe, but in the fourth animal, he couldn't describe. And he says it is extremely terrifying. I'm trying to uncover the Aramaic text to help us understand the emotions, the feelings, the things that he saw that led him to be so afraid. This is the fourth monster. The fourth monster is the one that troubled him the most. The first three, not so much. And it says here, teeth of iron. The teeth of iron is very similar to the legs of iron and the feet of iron mixed with clay. It is with regards to that metal iron, where it is forceful and very strong. And the description that scared him was an additional information which he never shared in verse 7, which says he has claws of copper, not bronze, but copper. And the bronze or copper metal is about very strong legs and it has claws. And so we just bear that in mind. It's just an imagery. I'm just trying to help us focus on the imagery. The first part here is the teeth of iron is in the mouth and it will eat and crush into pieces. Everything that came in contact. The second part here is trampled down the remainder with its feet, which is here, the remainder. When we talk about the crushing and devouring, it is important for us to remember that all the biblical prophecies, particularly here in chapter 7, focuses on the nation of Israel. And in this case, the the southern kingdom of Judah, because the northern kingdom was already deposed by the earlier kingdom of Assyria, which doesn't feature anymore. At this point in time, it was Babylon, the tail end of the Babylonian Empire. Daniel doesn't know what is going to come after, but the monsters shows that yes, the next monster is fearsome. The third monster is fearsome, but the fourth one is terrifying. Is just breaking things down and killing them along the way. That would be the picture in his mind. He tramples the remainder with his feet while he eats and crush in the mouth with the teeth of iron. What did this monster crush and eat? Because the focus of the imagery is very much on Israel, it would focus more on the Jews themselves. Whatever it can destroy, it will. Now, obviously, it is not talking clearly or explicitly, but I'm using the inference. One thing that I had mentioned is this: speculation is fine while we are not dogmatic about the details. The details of the monsters are to help identify the monster itself. And so this would be the monster of Rome, the Roman Empire, which lasted for over 1,400 years. So we see this as the fourth beast. Now, the reason why I'm reviewing this is because it continues to verse 20. I want to know the exact meaning, the truth of what is this fourth beast and of the 10 horns that were on its head. And so we can look at the 10 horns in the head. 10 horns must mean something, isn't it? Because usually when you look at an animal, the animal would have two horns. But 10 would mean that there is something in the number of horns that troubles him. And then the other which came out, which is the small little horn. And that is called the last horn. And then it came up, and before which three horns fell. Now, when we talk about three horns fell, that would be three horns that fell off the head. And in place, we find that it is just bare. What happened with the three horns? That is what Daniel is concerned. And then that horn had eyes and a mouth that utter great arrogance, and which was larger in appearance than its associates. What it's trying to express is that this horn is quite different from the rest of the horns because they are all the same in the same head, in the same monster. But this one has eyes and it has a big mouth. And what is important is why this particular horn? Why this way? Oh, and remember, Daniel is not telling us everything he has seen, but he is just writing down the highlights, particularly the ones that bothered him. Remember, the details is to help us identify the monster. The details is not to speculate on everything else. Now, earlier on, when we were talking about this monster, we suggested that the Jews had thought that the 10 horns represented Julius Caesar all the way to Vespasian. 10 particular emperors. And why up to Vespasian? Because it was at the time of Vespasian that the temple was destroyed by what they would think of the little horn. Not quite big yet, but he was understood to be Titus, the son of the last of the 10th emperor, Vespasian. Titus was the son, and he was the one who led for the destruction of the temple. Now, this will come back again in chapter 9. But it bothered Daniel because he doesn't know what all these are all about, particularly the little one. The little one is not different because this word associates could be read as comrades, could be read as colleagues. They are peers. They are having the same function. Eventually, Titus also took the throne. He became an emperor as well. But he was larger in appearance, meaning when you look at the horn, this little horn, it appears that this little horn stands out. And this little horn speaks very boldly, and it bothered Daniel. That's all we need to know. It bothered Daniel. The monster is one, but it has 11 horns. 10, and then one came out, a little one, and then it removed three before the horn. That would be the picture. And then we had verse 21. Now, verse 21 is also something new, something that Daniel did not talk about when he was talking about this little horn. It says, I kept looking, and that horn, which is the the little horn, right? That horn, the the other horn, the little horn, these are all the same meaning, referring to that same horn, was waging war with the holy ones and prevailing against them. Again, we come back to this particular word. It is not saints, it is the holy ones, the special ones, the special ones of God. Yes, God had chosen Israel to be his holy nation. And holy doesn't mean no sin. Holy literally means special, unique, different. And it was God's own people. And he was waging war. Now, this word waging war was to do battle, do war, fighting against God's holy ones, against, well, in this case, you can talk about the Jews because they are the ones remaining. The northern kingdom was already gone. And so the holy ones here literally would be the Jews. Now, by Jews, let us be very clear. They are the occupants of the southern kingdom. They are made up of the Benjamites, the Judahites, and also the Levites. And of course, you also find some of them that came down from the northern kingdom to seek refuge. But basically, they represent these holy ones. And not only that he was waging war, he was able to overcome, to prevail, to win against them. And that was why this little horn is known as Titus to the Jews. Now I'm giving you the Jewish understanding. It was during his time that the temple was destroyed. It was also this time that Jerusalem was destroyed. And maybe that is indicative of what it means by the little horn had waged war to fight and to lay siege around the city of Jerusalem, and then went in to destroy the city. About 1 million to 2 million Jews died at that time, and the temple was burnt down to the ground, completely destroyed. So perhaps that is why the Jewish commentators would see the 10 horns being the 10 emperors up to Vespasian, the little horn being Titus. Again, I am saying that this is a view, a perspective, the Jewish perspective of things. In verse 22, it begins with the word until, which means this, that the little horn had waged war against the holy ones of God and was prevailing over them, meaning the holy ones of God cannot overcome the little horn. And hence, when it says until, it was for a long period of time. And hence, this word here, until. It was after a long period, which means that had this been only Titus, that wouldn't be the case because Titus had died. And so the corresponding Jewish sages would think that it is Titus plus whatever came that the arrogance of Rome will represent. And so this is very much the idea of the Roman Empire continuing on to prevail over the Jewish people. And it will continue until the Ancient of Days, the olden, the ones of the former days came. And so this is a very interesting word because this word came or arrived means that there is a point in time when the Ancient of Days, being a terminology, a reference to God Himself. Remember, in this book, there is no name of God mentioned, only terms and reference and titles, and that the Ancient of Days will arrive to put a stop to this. Now, God putting a stop to this means that the prevailing or the wars waged against the Jews will come to an end at this point in time. And judgment or a judgment, that's what it says, and a judgment. And this can also be understood as, uh, I guess you can call a revenge, vengeance. A decision was made, a judgment was made, a vengeance was made, and this says was passed in favor. The idea of pass in favor is an interpretation. It should be said that a judgment was given. That is all it says, not pass in favor. It was given to the holy ones of the highest one, which is in Hebrew, Elyon. So the Kadosh of the Elyon or Elyon itself, uh, and the time arrived when the holy ones took possession of the kingdom. Again, here it talks about a time. The time is until, and it arrived, came when the saints, the holy ones, took possession of the kingdom, and this would be the messianic kingdom, which tells us this: we have an A and a B in our midst. So the first part here is an A, the second part here is a B. When the Ancient of Days came and vengeance was given to the holy ones of the Elyon, it also means that the time arrived when these holy ones took possession of the kingdom, the Messianic kingdom, also known as the Davidic kingdom. In the understanding of the Jewish people, they are looking forward for the Messiah to establish a kingdom here on earth, not the Roman Empire. And so there is a long period where the little horn continues to wage war and prevail until God decides on a time. And so there is a decision that God will have to make. That is what verse 22 is saying. And it will come to a point in time when the kingdom will be set up. And so when we see the kingdom set up, that will be the time when God says it is time. Now, in verse 23 is what we are going to pay attention. In the last few verses, the angel describes it. This is what he said, the one of those standing before God, an angel being. And he describes it this way: the fourth monster will be a fourth kingdom on the land. Remember, it is a kingdom. And so we identify it as the Roman kingdom. And particularly on the earth, yes, we are talking about a world empire, but it is also a world empire that has to do with the land of Israel, the God's land that was given to his people. And so all these four monsters, Babylon, Medo Persia, Grecian, and now Roman, they all have something to do with the land of Israel. If it has nothing to do with the land of Israel, it would not have been interesting to put in a prophecy or this kind of a vision or a nightmare. And it says that this fourth kingdom, it is a kingdom, the Roman kingdom, will be very different from all the other kingdoms, which means that the first three monsters are also kingdoms: the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Grecian Empire. The fourth is the Roman Empire, and it will devour the whole land and trample it and crush it. So we see this. If you read this word, the whole earth, to understand this as the whole land or the land of Israel, it is to trample it down and to crush it, which means that the people themselves will not be able to live in peace. The people there would not be able to govern it. The people on it will be oppressed and they will be crushed. Crushed in this sense. The idea of crush means to be shattered into pieces. And so it can be depicted by the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and beyond, even until today. So, what is interesting to observe is God will have to come and say, enough. When that happens, then the kingdom will be restored to the holy ones. That is the explanation given by the angel. Now, how would the angel know? I'm sure the angel would have been told by God in his plan, just like in Job chapter 1 and 2, that conversation with Hasatan in the court of the heavens is a public conversation. And so this one told Daniel. And then he says in verse 24, as for the 10 horns, these 10 horns, with 3 of them that fell off, out of this kingdom are the 10 kings. That's why the Jewish people thinks of Julius Caesar until Vespasian will arise, and then another will arise after them, which is the little horn, and he will be different from the previous one and will humble 3 kings. This idea of humbling literally means to humiliate. I think that would be a good word. To humiliate 3 other kings, bring low, subdue them. How that took place in history, I can't say. And so it will be very much a speculation of who the little horn or what that little horn comprises. So it was said to be one that will overpower the world with domination of belief systems, like Constantine, perhaps, using religion to rule the land. And it would be a combination of perhaps 3 religious systems. Now, again, I am saying that these are speculations because we don't have very much to go on, and we can't be dogmatic because it is not a matter of being insistent that one is better than another. But we do realize that it is part and parcel of the Roman Empire and what has affected that Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire in itself has continued. And so when you look at the history of the Roman Empire, starting from Constantine using religion to rule the world or unify his kingdom, and when the Roman Empire eventually disappeared to the Islamic empires, you find that the Roman empires continued in the form of the Roman Catholic powers because they became the kingmakers of the European nations. And hence, through that power, you could say that they are kingmakers. They are greater than the kings. They are the ones ruling the people because of the belief system all around the world as it is being spread. Now, that is one view. And so many people can sit and then observe and give their speculations. And so, what I'm trying to share with you is what is commonly spoken of, not the only ones, but commonly spoken of by the Jewish commentators. In verse 25, we are still focusing on the little horn that stood out to Daniel, that had eyes, had a big mouth, was very arrogant, and he speaks arrogant things. Daniel didn't record exactly what the little horn said. But here in verse 25, the angel, one who was standing before the Ancient of Days, says this, and he will speak, speak words against the Most High, and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. And we just will spend a little bit of time discussing this before we end. The little horn is the one being referred, and he will speak words. And the text here says that he speaks words against the Most High. The Most High will be El Yonim, the highest, the of the highest, right? The highest of the highest. And this will be God Himself. Remember, there is no name for God. They're just titles and references pointing to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The next one here is to wear down. The word wear down here is to oppress, to harass. To harass, to oppress saints would be the holy ones, right? The holy ones of the highest one. The most high and the highest one are exactly similar words. Now, the next part here is this, and he will intend. Now, this is an interesting word. He will intend means he thinks. He thinks to do this. He thinks to make alteration. Now, this word make alteration literally means to change, to make changes, or to frustrate. Frustrate what? Now, it is important to understand this word here is times and law. Now, I would bring our attention with says about times. This is zaman, and in the Arabic is zaman, and this would be periods or seasons or a set occasion, and it does make reference uh, to the times of the Jewish people. You can call it the feasts or the holy days because they are called the appointed times. The second part here is understood as law. And the word law here would be the equivalent, the decrees of God. The decrees of God. What God has laid down, and it would be laid down for the Jewish people. And particularly for our purposes, you can think of it as the Torah. Now, if you sit down and think about it, this little horn wants to change the feast days or appointed days and the Torah. And it does happen when somebody says that there is the Jews are not supposed to do this anymore, and the Torah is of the past. It is no longer important, and the feast that the Jewish people had needs to change. The times that God had appointed for them to go to the temple in Jerusalem is no longer necessary. Why? Well, perhaps there's no more temple. There's no more Jerusalem, and there is no more kingdom, and hence the laws of God is of no particular use. Now, is that the case? Now, that's a speculation. That is a way of trying to understand how it relates to the Jewish people, because the fourth little horn, the fourth monster with the 11th horn, which is a little horn, is the one that is trying to change things for the Jews. And they will be given. Now, this word they would be the holy ones. The holy ones will be given because they have nowhere to go. They were in the control of the Roman Empire. So the holy ones will be handed over to the little horn for, it says here, time, times in plural, and half a time. Now, this is a period of time that we need to speculate, right? It is a period. How long that period is, we don't really know. But it is a period until the decision of vengeance will take place. The judgment by the Most High will take place. And so remember, in the earlier discussion, the Ancient of Days will have to make a statement, will have to make a judgment, will have to make a vengeance, will have to put his foot down so that the kingdom will return to his holy ones. And so, verse 25 is talking about the time when the little horn takes place in the Roman Empire until the future time when God or the Ancient of Days will give back the power of the kingdom of the land to his people, the holy ones. And with this, we will take a break and we will end here. And this is the end of our session today.